Hello, everybody. Hi, Rupert. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Shradha. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. And welcome, everybody, to our podcast, Unpacking Organizations. And this is the last podcast of the season. So, Rupert and I are very excited to do this podcast as well as look forward to what we have in store for you next year. But also, it's like really nice to have done this podcast with you. So, thank you so much, Rupert, for being my partner in crime. And thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a really great journey for me.
Unpacking Organizations, the Practitioners Podcast. Sponsored by Orgvue. See tomorrow's business, today.
Maybe we should think about one topic which we have spoken about as a red thread across a lot of our episodes, but not really given a standalone importance to it, attention to it, is that critical roles. And there's so many definitions of critical role. Every organization has their own definitions. And I know that in the workforce planning, there's so many other roles that get listed out, that pivotal role, operationalization roles, and whatnot. But I feel that that overcomplicates things. So I want to stick to just saying that we should just have critical roles or non-critical roles in the organization. But even with that kind of simplicity, what is a critical role? And let's unpack that today. What do you think, Rupert?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, Rupert, in your book, you definitely have different dimensions of critical roles. Let's start with that. That what do you think is a critical role? What are some of the definitions and dimensions that we need to think through as we think about them?
Cool. So I like to think along three different dimensions,
Hmm.
um, and in a data driven way. So I like the first dimension is impact, and it's the positive and negative impact on the overall shareholder value and value of the business, with the ability to execute the strategy. So, what is that impact? And it's hard and to go high, medium, low. I never like. But if you
So, how do you do it?
so if you pick the most critical one, and use that as your anchor, what is it relative to that?
Interesting.
And so for your business, and if you're in software development and the lead architect who's writing the code and you're quite early, I mean, that might be the most critical, right? Because if you don't have a product, you don't have anything else in the engineering. So you might say, well, that. Um, and then you can track things relative to the impact. And if you get it, what is the kind of impact that they would have if they make a mistake and destroy something? Well, it could be terminal, or it's close to terminal, right? Or really, really meaningful. And then everything's using a swing rating. You say, well, this is 50% of that, or this is 25% of that, and so that's just a way on that axis.
So that's actually really good. I want to call out is that one thing which I just heard from you is that the critical role may not be the most senior role in the organization, like the most critical role with which you are now comparing the rest. So in that organization, it's the principal architect of a software code and not the head of the global technology department,
Yeah,
right? And that's a very key thing to distinguish. Yeah.
very much. And I think when we go through the other criteria, it becomes even that
Hmm.
point becomes even clearer. Um, the next one is time to productivity, uh, or TTP, as I love to create TLAs, three-letter acronyms. So time to productivity is, let's say someone leaves, or someone's leaving. How long does it take? And you can't replace internally, right? How long does it take to get someone external? So source them, recruit them, bring them in, onboard them, but then that they are as productive as the person who left. And if you take the architect example, there's so much knowledge, so many ways of working, cultural, people, relationship, but also the code base and everything else. It takes a really long time to learn all that stuff. That takes years. And so you measure the TTP in months or years. And again, that's a continuous metric. Um, and The third component is how many different people and positions are there for that role? Because if there's 100 and one person leaves, the impact isn't so great because you've got another 99. So it's really, if there's only one and it's hugely long time to productivity and the impact is massive, that's an existential threat to your business. And you need to start working through mitigation strategies for that, which is not just about retention of that person, which obviously that's key, but something can always happen to a human being. You've got the proverbial bus they can be hit by. So one of the things that then becomes a business discussion around how do we mitigate this. Um, and so those three lenses. So this is a lot about risk as well when we think about critical roles. And if, for instance, the impact is really negative from a bad decision in terms of reputational risk or delivery risk, or then you need to make sure that you're addressing those things as well. So it's a risk lens, I think, as
Right.
much as a talent management lens.
I like that. I like that you're thinking about both sides of it, that how much of value creation happens through this, but also that how much of the value erosion will happen if this is not done right. So I think that lens of value erosion or mistakes and risks, sometimes we don't take that enough. So questions that I just sometimes face is that, is it okay to outsource critical roles, right? Like some of the critical roles, like one of the lens that's I've heard people say that if this is a critical, we want to keep it as a core and we don't want to outsource it. And that's why, again, in workforce planning, there's another role that comes in, that these are my core roles, I'm not going to outsource them, they're not critical but they're not pivotal but they're core. So how do you think about that part?
So kind of by definition, if you can outsource it, it's got a very low TTP.
Hmm.
It's fast. So therefore, it's not critical. So let's give an example: legal counsel. Um, the impact is massive, which is why we pay less than our lawyers so much. But you get that wrong. You're putting a big contract together or a commercial. You're doing a JV. I mean, the impact of that is significant. The ability, the time to go and source a law firm and lawyers who've got that expertise and whatever, it's very short. There's a very, very effective market for that. So outsource it, right? Particularly the complex stuff and what have you. Yes, you might have a GC managing all of this, but so and over again, your brand is critical. You get the brand wrong, you're in deep trouble. But there are great brand agencies who hire the best of the best. So I think it's overly simplistic to say if it's has such a huge impact, it should be in-sourced, and if it doesn't, it should be outsourced. Um, so I think there are other lenses other questions around: is this does this give us a competitive advantage, and is this unique to what we're doing? Then you want to in-source that because it's unique and according to Porter's activity system and competitive advantage. Is having brand capability giving us a competitive advantage, all these legal skills? No. Is having an amazing brand giving us? Yes, and we need to have the best agency and then drive through and maintain that. So I think there's a subtle difference, and maybe people are just conflating those things
Right.
and that terminology.
And that brings us to the point that the critical roles should be in context of the business strategy execution. So, to your point, like, is brand helping us with the business strategy execution, or is just a good to have for our business? How is that in relation with our business strategy? That is important for us to think through. I think another question, which I would say, and maybe that will also go back to the same dimensions, and we'll run through that we've heard, and at least I've seen case studies in which in Starbucks, barista is considered as a critical role because they are the face to the customer. They create that kind of sense for which the the Starbucks business strategy is supposed to be like linked to that for creating that welcoming and very homely your mom and pop shop of coffee. And but then there are thousands of them, and so is that truly a critical role? And like I'm just posing a challenging question so that we can unpack that better, but
So
what do you
if
think about
I'm
those?
well, I mean, it's very local. So my guess is baristas aren't traveling everywhere. Like you might have
Right.
lots in Seattle, but maybe
Yes.
not as many in Minneapolis, for instance. I don't know. I'm just plucking cities
Yeah.
out of the air. No offense to anyone in Minneapolis, um, but and then, but how hard is it to find them? Like, and is it critical from Starbucks from a corporate perspective? Probably not. But is it you're the manager of each um, outlet? I don't know what Starbucks call their shops, their cafes. I don't know what they call them. But whatever, then it's critical for that. And if you get and it's a skill, how long does it take to become productive? I don't know, but let's say it takes a really long time and they're hard to find, and it's if you lose them, it has a huge impact on your customer, the customer experience. Then it's more critical, right? But then I would say, what then becomes critical because you have to do that at scale is what's our onboarding process for baristas? What's our training process? Because at the end of the day, you've got thousands of them. So what's the Starbucks way? How do you make it that a Starbucks barista is special? And that's then more how you think about that organization rather than saying, well, obviously they're important, but anyone that's in a customer facing role is an ambassador and represents your brand and who you are and is going to deal with complaints. And so that's really, really important. But from this perspective of critical corporately in terms of strategy execution, I think it's a subtly different point.
And that goes to any such like customer facing role, which could be even call center executives, right? And for some organization it is just one enabler, and the other it could be really most important role depending
Yep.
upon the business strategy. So I think I just wanted to bring that example to create like uh, uh James,
Discussion.
yeah,
Yeah.
discussion.
I
So
mean what all we're
yeah,
trying to do is get people thinking.
right.
Yeah, I think at scale, I think it's useful to think the scaling of it. So if and another example, I was chatting to someone and they have 700 outlets. And, each of their outlets, the manager of that outlet is absolutely critical, right? And the amount of profitability you get from that outlet is really driven in large part by the quality of that manager. So to me, it is existential that you are good at hiring, retaining, training the best um, managers of your outlets, and that you have methods and incentive programs and everything around that because they have such a huge swing. And it's the same. I've got another client that's runs a pub group, and the pub manager, and they provide food and the chef, that those are absolutely critical. So then your ability to build and understand the competencies that make them really exceptional and all the systems around them and the return, that's critical. But that's doesn't fall under the critical role in terms of if they leave, you're really in trouble, and therefore we need to be thinking about that. Yeah. At least the strategies are different, right? If there's 700, I need a different type of strategy than if there's 2 or 3.
Absolutely. And the succession planning, the pipeline, the talent pipeline, all those strategies will be different if
Yep.
we have the number of reps. So, what are your takeaways from this, Rupert?
Um, my takeaway is be clear on definitions as always
Mm-hmm.
and what drives it. And I like to make it continuous, so it's relative. So you're plotting, think of it as a scatter plot, a bubble chart. So you can see them, and then the top right is the most critical, and as you move down to the bottom left, with the lens of scale. So visualize it, think about it, and you will find surprises. Because to your point, Shradha, it isn't the seniority isn't really the driver, right? There might be a correlation with seniority. The more senior, the more likely you're going to be, but there's going to be lots and lots of extremely critical roles far down your organization, and then thinking through, so what are we going to do about
Right.
this?
Right.
Right. That's the other big. It's all
Absolutely.
just identifying something does nothing. What is the action you're going to
Absolutely.
take?
Right. What are
Um,
the onboarding? What are the training? What are some of
yeah,
how do we make them productive and make their lives
yeah.
better? Um, my takeaway would be that keep it simple. Just do not get overcomplicated with who is critical versus pivotal versus core, operational, and whatnot. Just keep it like focus on critical and focus on all the things that we just spoke about.
Shredder, I think we're done on that one.
Hmm.
We've got our takeaways. Looking back over the whole first series or the first season, what was your favorite and most surprising episode or moment?
I mean, overall, I really enjoyed doing it. So, if I can say that what was my most surprising element was that I was very nervous starting it, and I just was surprised how smoothly it flowed between the two of us. So, that was really great. Um, I think I really enjoyed listening to you on how whip because I was just so excited about bringing it back and actually um, putting into practice that yes, we've done org design. That how can we just talk about it and make it really work in a classroom setting or a conference room setting rather than just going back and doing it right away. I was surprised people liked FIDRAM, the right sizing, so much. I really got a lot of shout outs on that on my network. Um, there was also surprisingly bureaucracy index was very popular somehow. It it touched a chord with people on that one. So how whip, fidram, bureaucracy index, but I think the most favorite was that are we the bad people. I
Yeah,
think everybody enjoyed that one. How about you, Rupert? I mean, what was your favorite episode?
you stole my thunder.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
no. It's good. It's are we bad? I mean, that question probably made me think more, and that was a question from one of our listeners. So thank you. And um, I I mean, I'm really pleased that some of the more technical podcasts like FidRam, HowWeb, right, so, bureaucracy index, that people have got so much value from that, and which makes me believe that we're upskilling and helping people become more proficient in this domain, which is really what we're trying to achieve. And I just love these questions and these these tough questions. And with if you haven't listened to it, the feedback, I think Shredder and I were both very quite emotional and a little bit vulnerable um, in that podcast about are we good or bad people, and the truth is sometimes bad, and if sometimes the work that is done by OD professionals has really negative impacts on the world, and I think it's important to reflect on that and to make sure that we do this work well because it impacts so many people, disproportionately impacts so many people. We have a duty of care really to do that well. And so with that in mind and with that passion, because that's a lot of where our passion comes from, we are going to do another season and
Yes.
looking forward to the next season. If you have questions, please let us know. We're both on LinkedIn. That's a good place, or you can directly through the site raise your questions. Please follow us and share. And in the next season, we're looking to speak to guests. We're
Yes.
looking to speak to academics, to practitioners, to consultants, to people. So it will still be Shredder and I, the two of us sometimes geeking off on questions, but let's get some other perspective. So equally, if you think you've got a perspective or there's someone who you really think is quite inspirational in the space that the world should hear their voice and that you think would be valuable, then again, make a suggestion there as well. So, very much looking forward to that. But Shradha, in the meantime, have a nice, well-deserved break over the
Thank you, Rupert.
holidays.
I know. Thank you, Rupert, and same to you. I know you are working on really amazing passion projects of yours, so all the best for that.
Thank you.
And I am really looking forward to 2024. I hope world will be a better place then. It has been a tough year for many of us all over the world, so I just hope that world continues to get better. And the world of org design continues to get better.
The world of org design and the world in general both need to really get a lot better. So here's to 2024. Thanks, Shradha.
Yes. Thank you, Rupert. Take care.